Hi there and welcome to my channel. Today's project is for Altenew, as today they are releasing a new set of stencils and dies, and these are amazing. So I'm going to show you a project I'm creating using the Tranquil wings stencil and also the bursting Dahlia stencil, and it's something very simple, lots of fun to put together, and it's going to come together. You're going to see how nice it worked out. So my idea is I actually want to draw the outline of the bursting Dahlia. So what I'm going to grab is actually a heavy cardstock. This is heavy cardstock. I think I'm using Nina. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it's Nina. And all I'm going to do is, you can use also watercolor, by the way. I just didn't want something really white. And I'm going to bring a fine liner, and literally I'm just going to go through the entire outline of the stencil, kind of drawing the inside area of each of the petals. So I'm going to take my time and just draw each of the petals. The liner that I'm using is a Muji pen 0.25, one of my favorite things to use, but it's not waterproof, so the ink is gonna leak into the flower, which is what I'm looking for. If you don't want the ink to kind of become watery when you add the watercolor, which is what I'm going to use, then I suggest you look at maybe a fine liner or something with a gel tip that is going to dry completely, and make sure it dries completely before you continue working. So like I said, this pen is not waterproof. I want that look. I want something that is going to blur the lines a little bit. I want to make it very artistic. So you're going to see that I am just taking my time just to draw each of the lines, following the stencil. So I'm drawing the petal one by one, and I'm gonna take it off camera and finish working I'm gonna fill up the entire page with the stencil design. Once I have that, I'm actually gonna work with the new artist palette, and this palette is a dream. Very vivid colors, very creamy. It's just a dream to work with. If you like watercolors, then this is a palette that you want to have in your stash. So all I'm going to do is, you're going to see that for the first flower, I'm just going to add water. I'm going to just kind of fill each petal with water, and then I'm going to add a diluted amount of the pigment, in this case the watercolor, just to cover the petal. And then I'm going to come in with, I'm going to say, a little bit more pigment or a darker tone, just to create a little bit of shading. I don't want to be there's other times that I'm very careful about the watercolor. I make sure that it looks really realistic. In this case, all I'm going for is adding a little bit of shading towards the center, because I wanted the color to be more concentrated in the center of the petals, and then kind of expand for there. But I'm not gonna be super strict about the shadows and everything. I just want something really artistic, fun, and I want something very colorful. So you're gonna see that I'm gonna stay within the reds and the peaches, and this is red cosmos. I also used, if I'm not mistaken, crimson, and I can't remember the other purple one, but I used those three tones. They're like next to each other, and you're gonna see that at the beginning I started with just water, but as I'm working, my brush has a little bit of watercolor left. I make sure that I dilute it. I paint my petal, kind of softening the area, depositing some water, and then I'm gonna come in with a more concentrated, a little bit more of the pigment, and just kind of dab it from the center out, and that's gonna give me that really watercoloring look that I'm looking for. Remember that I'm using a pen that is actually not a waterproof. It's not a gel pen, and the ink is gonna run, which is okay. I'm okay with that. That's just gonna soften the line that I drew to and bring some of that gray into the petal. Love how this turned out. So I'm gonna take my time. Didn't take me long, but it did take me a while to do this, just because I had to go petal by petal, and you're gonna see, but it was really fun. It didn't take that long though. It just, like I said, it takes a little bit longer just because I'm going petal by petal, and I'm speeding up and cutting some. Otherwise it will be like a long process video. So again, nothing fancy. You're gonna see that I'm gonna say one of the flowers are gonna be that magenta color, two of the flowers are gonna be more on the crimson, kind of a light pink tone, and then the last one is gonna be more on the peachy side. So again, I'm just gonna show you how I finish. Like I said, I sped up the process, and then I'm gonna come in and show you just a little bit how I begin the next flower. And you're gonna see that you can see the petals right now. Nothing like artistic, or I'm gonna say like very detailed. I'm just adding watercolor, creating the shading, and make sure that it looks really, again, watercolor look, what I'm going for. So now that I have it ready, I set it aside to dry completely. I'm gonna start working on adding the center of the flowers, and I want to add texture, but I don't want something that's really off for what I have there. So my choice, I'm gonna use rose gold glaze, and this glaze is from Vicky Boutin. And all I'm gonna do, you're gonna see, is that I'm gonna place the stencil so that the little center of the flowers fit right on the center of what I painted, and then I'm gonna go with palette knife, and I'm just gonna apply the glaze right to the center to create the impression of all those little circles. And I'm gonna set this aside to dry. You're gonna see that the color is really light, very into the pink tones. Now that it has dried, I'm actually gonna take my time to fussy cut all of the flowers, and it was very simple to fussy cut. They're not very detailed, so took no time to cut, but I'm gonna make sure that I cut all 4 of them, and I'm gonna leave a tiny little bit of a white space after the petal. So again, I'm gonna come off camera and just continue working on that, and then once I have them already, I'm gonna work on creating some of the embellishments. And this layout is gonna be very simple because I think the flowers are large enough to take a lot of the space of the layout. So my next step is I'm actually gonna use the Tranquil Winds stencil set to create a large moth or a butterfly for this layout. So my choice this time is I'm going to use some ink blending, and for this I'm using one of my blending brushes, and the colors that I'm using, I believe that the last ones it's not a pocket full of sunshine, but it's the latest yellow tones, and I'm using chamomile as the base tone for the butterfly. Just in case you want to repeat it, I'm using chamomile. And since the ink, I'm gonna say, kind of dries faster than the watercolor, I'm able to kind of create the next step. And for the next step is all in one single stencil, and all it is gonna be give me the details of the wings. So for this, I'm going to use Vicky Boutin, the gold glaze, and then a stencil brush, and I'm actually going to apply this impression. I don't want something texture, but I don't want something very texture, but I want to create a little bit of a difference. And what I'm doing is I'm just picking up some of the glaze and going on a circular motion on top of the stencil, and that creates an impression that has a tiny little bit of texture, but it has that feel of the glaze, and it dries really fast because it's such a thin application. Once I have that, like, you know, the detail of the wings, I'm going to actually move the stencil so that I can create the antennae of the butterfly in this case. And after that, there's also the thorax or the centerpiece of the butterfly, and for this I'm actually going to continue working with the gold glaze, but this time I'm going to apply this with a palette knife. I set it aside to dry and fussy cut around it so I have it ready for my decoration. So now all I'm going to do is start building the layout, and I have these pictures of my kids on their last day of summer. I always take a picture of the first day of summer and the last day of summer, just to kind of track how much they've grown, how much they have changed. So all I'm going to do is, once I placed the picture, I pretty much know what I want to do. I want to surround it with flowers. I'm actually going to bring in the stencil, and I'm going to bring the Tropical Forest ink set mini cubes. I have the mini cubes just to create the impression of some of the leaves. And all I'm doing is using my ink blending tool, this brush, and I'm just picking some of the color and going on a circular motion, or going around on top of the leaf impression, just to create that leaf on my paper. And I'm just gonna play around with the stencil. Has 3 leaves, one that has a lot of movement, looks like a feather, and there's a medium one and a small one. So I'm gonna move them a little bit just to create clusters of leaves. And remember, the flowers are really long, so I want to make sure that I create a few loose ones too, because I know that they're gonna get lost with the flower. And I'm gonna take it off camera and continue working. What I did with the picture is I just back it with a piece of vellum, and I added some foam adhesive behind it just to give it some lift. And once I glue it in place, I'm just gonna go ahead and start assembling this layout. And you're gonna see that I'm not shy about cutting off some of the flowers that I created. And I think this, like I said, just because I want to make sure that the picture looks like as if it's nestled within flowers, I might have to cut some of it just to kind of bulk up the cluster. And you're gonna see that I'm adding a little bit of foam adhesive behind the flowers, not just to attach it to the layout, but to help me create the dimension that I'm looking for. Now that I've already created that cluster around the bottom of the picture, corner, I'm actually going to use the other 2 flowers to create a cluster. I'm going to say on the top left corner of the layout, and you're going to see that I'm going to make sure that I place one of the flowers so half of it is coming off the page, and I'm actually going to cut that part and help me bulk up the cluster again. I just want to make sure that I have these 2 big clusters of flowers, and that's going to be kind of my focal point. And my third focal point is going to be the butterfly that I created. So I'm going to bring it, and you're going to see that I'm really forming a triangle on my page. For the butterfly, what I'm doing is I'm just kind of fold the wings a little bit just to give it some movement, and I'm going to make sure that I attach foam adhesive underneath the wings just to help me create that the shape on the page. Once I have that in place, I'm actually gonna come back again with that rose gold glaze that I would use for the center of the flowers, and again I'm gonna use the same impression, those little circles, just to add that impression all over the page. I just want to bring a little bit of the shine. I want to bring a little bit of what I'm using on the layout, a little bit of texture, just to cover the whiteness of the page. And once I have that in place, it's gonna take a little bit longer to dry just because I'm adding texture. There's a lot more of the paste. Once I have that in place, I'm actually gonna stamp my title, and I'm using the Across the Pond stamp set and also black obsidian ink, and I'm gonna stamp my sentiments between the flowers and the butterfly. Once I have that in place, I'm actually gonna bring the metallic palette and just add a few accents of pink, if you want to call it, of the metallic watercolor. I just want to bring more of the shine that I'm adding through the iridescent glaze, in this case the rose glaze. I just want to add a few more details to my page. So you're gonna see right now that I'm gonna bring the metallic palette, just add some water and splatter some of the ink around the page. This time I added the paint splatters before adding my lines with journal, and I'm gonna add my lines with journal right underneath the picture, kind of underneath the flower, just a few lines. You're gonna see that I'm just adding a very fine sprinkling of the metallic paint, just because I want a little bit more of extra shine. And I'm gonna set it aside to dry for a little bit, just because I'm adding the water. Once it's completely dry, I'm actually gonna bring a few sequin, and I'm just gonna add them to some of the areas. I just want to bring some shine to this page. This page is very simple. I think it's so beautiful. I love how the flowers turned out, but it needs a little bit extra shine. So I'm just gonna bring up a few sequin and just gonna scatter them around some of the little center of the flower impressions. And like I said, my lines with journal, I wrote them outside of the camera. I'm gonna add them right underneath the picture that is underneath not the picture, sorry, the flower that is underneath the picture. And that's about it. I love how this turned out. I love the colors. I love how simple it came together. I even love the fact that the ink of the pen just ran into the flower and made it look so much softer. And I hope you try it. Stencils are a great way to practice many things, coloring, your no line coloring, just because they're so forgiving. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to hop onto the blog to check more projects. I created quite a few, and also to have the chance to win a gift certificate and be inspired by other designers. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you soon. Take care, guys.